Hey everyone, I'm Aedangraef, and today I am going to be tackling Forever Howlong by Black Country New Road. Forever Howlong is a project that I have been looking at with anticipation and nervousness, covering on the Untrained Ear. Uh, but I think that it's time to just break the seal on this one. This album was highly anticipated for a long time by BCNR, since the very shocking announcement that their former lead singer, Isaac Wood, was leaving the band. Uh, there was a lot of speculation as to what was going to happen, and a lot of scrambling happened, and eventually they did, move forward and put together some pieces and decided, rather than doing what they had been doing, which was catering kind of the entirety of their sound to one cohesive vocalist and really catering this fully dynamic experience to that, that they were going to be more widespread. Which was a bold move. And so we have the birth of Forever Howlong, which began touring before the album was released. They were touring with a lot of the pieces from it, which at that point Tyler Hurd, May Kershaw, and Georgia Ellery took over as the vocalists for this album. At least they are the front three who sing. And I have to say, of the three, I felt like all three were phenomenal. But Tyler Hyde was just particularly so dynamic on this album in her featured tracks. She really, I think, introduced a breadth of emotional spectrum that I think uh, showed a semblance of depth that she's capable of bringing to the table. That, maybe things are going to be okay in the absence of Isaac Wood. This is a legendary band. There are big shoes to fill. And we'll get into that, as we go. But, in the absence of Isaac Wood, there's going to be some turnover in fan base. There's going to be some turnover in sound. And this was part of why this album was looked towards so much, is because um, filling that piece was a huge deal. And I think that they address that. And we have Forever Howlong. One thing that I felt really carried forth in the transition of Forever Howlong from AFUT, the previous album, is the concept of orchestrational excellence. Like, it's not Black Country New Road if it doesn't have just phenomenal instrumentation all around. They're a huge band, and they have lots of different immensely talented musicians working on their projects. And I've put it before about them that talking about it simply as like a band or as instrumentation feels like it's a disservice. When you're talking about Black Country New Road, this is orchestration, pure and simple. And I think that's still showcased in Forever Howlong. Ants from Up There, it especially had that. I think that there was almost a step beyond even orchestration. It was almost musical cinema, I think, in that album. But here, it's still very clearly present and was phenomenal. So it was good to see that was still there. I don't think anybody was afraid of that. Um, but all the same, I think as a whole, this record is more accessible and uplifting at moments than obviously the previous one was. It was much darker. A lot of the, live performances that you're going to find still circling to this day online, with Isaac, uh, still practically screaming into the mic, straining his voice. This isn't that kind of an album. And I think it's better for it that they didn't try to be that kind of an album going into it. And I think that it is going to introduce a breadth of fresh ears into Black Country New Road, which is, it's good. I think that they're going through a change as a band, and I think it's a new page. And that doesn't mean that it's a bad thing. It's just hard to follow up such a phenomenal previous album, uh, and want to make a change. The classic saying, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Certainly the previous album wasn't broke by any means. It was a piece of musical masterpiece, really, the previous album. So it's tough to say goodbye. But I think this album speaks to the fact that it's a good thing that they decided to keep performing. So right off the rip, you're kind of introduced with Besties, which is a track that really comes in swinging with a very like popping, bouncy sound instrumentally, which is, fascinating to me, because it's crossing, lyrically, there's this like crossing dynamic between, the vocalists singing about, friendship, like they're besties, they're best friends, but beneath it there's this clear taunting layer of her kind of wanting something more with the friendship on top of that, and there's kind of LGBT undertones amidst all of that as well, um, which adds an even like more interesting dynamic into everything, and tension. And I think that it is fascinating. Like instrumentally, it just again like you keep hammering back in like this band really knows what they're doing from an instrumental sound point where you have this very like poppy, like happy instrumentation that even like the lyrics at one point it talks about like being a walking TikTok trend. It's very like surface level, like happy, but I think it's hiding, a lot of instrumental and orchestral depth beneath that like very easy to palate poppy sound in Besties. I think it's a great introduction to the album. These these April drops are really like I think hammering it home with these awesome opening tracks. And so, Besties, I think, does that expertly, and is a great introduction to the album. And then you get Salem Sisters a little later, which was a downright impressive song. I love what they did with it, where they take the idea of teenage gossip and they equate it to the Salem witch trials, which, as somebody who has some experience working with adolescents, it's obviously not like literally similar, but metaphorically there is definitely some similarity to be spoken into about this. Instrumentally, I thought this track was very fascinating, where there is a steady like pulse and pickup of the instrumentation as you kind of go through the track, and it's almost taunting in a way where as it starts off like where it is in the beginning, and then like the vigor and depth and breadth of everything like really picks up and gets more potent and powerful by the end of the track, to the point where it's like almost roaring at the end, despite being like deceptively like kind of happy and like airy. It's obviously talking about Salem witches being burned at the stake at the end. And I thought that it was this contrasting kind of concept really coded the lyricism to the song well. So I thought that the track was a home run. Then you have Happy Birthday, probably the most iconic track on the album. Lyrically, it's pretty straightforward. It's a condescending track that talks about, privilege, and about, how, oh, you shouldn't be, taking what you have for granted. You've been born into all of this, or given the rights to all this privilege, and it's not your fault that you're so naive and spoiled. It's just your circumstance. And it's very like unempathetic and unforgiving. And I think that Tyler was the perfect vocalist to pick for this track, because her vocal style just really jives well with this lyricism. And I really felt like she was just, of the three, she was the perfect fit for it. If you listen to the song, you'll know what I'm talking about. Um, I think this is also a testament to the musicality, uh, the excellence in musicality that BCNR possesses. Um, Specifically Tyler, again, like I'm just gonna like build a mural to her or something and just like praise her. She's the bassist, by the way, but she does obviously a ton of vocals on this album because she actually breaks a rule or pushes boundaries at the very least. One of the main rules of singing. I have some limited degree of experience in uh, musical performance in so far as I did some theater in high school. Yeah, theater nerd. Tyler does things with vowels that you're traditionally encouraged to kind of stay away from in musical performance, where she'll kind of drag them out and make them sound very unnatural and enunciated, and sometimes she'll hold them for like multiple bars and exorbitantly long amounts of time, to the point where uh, I hadn't realized on my first listen that she was still on the same word when she was doing some of the lines from this song. And it really does just the service of like hammering in some of these points and really like, you almost feel like she's got like the fork and she's like digging under the skin a little bit and like, like poking at you and prodding at you with some of the jabs that she's making, but it's good. I mean, it's just so good, and they're all inserted perfectly. I didn't feel like any of the times that she broke the rule that it was done wrong. And they always say when somebody's a master of the craft is when they can do things like this and make it work efficiently. And you learn all the rules of musicality so that you can employ at the right spot the moments where you can break them. So I felt like, it was a testament to the band on whole to know when they could do this sort of thing. The drama of Happy Birthday is its greatest selling point, and I think her breaking this rule, the instrumentation, everything that kind of goes into that is what makes the song so potent. I think it's easily the most memorable track on the album, and I think that uh, it, it's nearly a perfect song in my mind, and uh, I think a lot of the songs on this album, frankly, were. And yeah, I was impressed, and I just keep coming back to finding myself saying that. Which again, like it's Black Country New Road. Big shocker. I was impressed, but still. And that brings me to For the Cold Country, which is my favorite track on the album. Um, this was, when you talk about drama in music, this was the PowerPoint presentation case and point, like, slam the door, this is it. This track tells an amazing narrative of guilt, yearning for connection, and some truth about the cycle of PTSD. Uh, they're talking about a soldier, like, from the very, like, feudal, like, knight sense here, like, medieval times, but this is relevant even now. Some of the ideas that you deal with in terms of the guilt and, running away from a battle and finding a little crevice to crawl into. Like, these are things that can happen and do happen all the time. I think that it's amazing how fearlessly they're willing to just tap into that and go. And from that perspective, the instrumentation is beyond inspired. It is beyond perfection. I think I really, in this track, feel glimpses of old BCNR when I'm listening to it. Um, it is so dramatic. It is so it crescendos and it descends, and it's so raw and gut pulling and emotional in the best ways. Where you really just feel so connected, not just to the knight in the story, but to the airy vocals and the kicking of the drums and the splash of the cymbal and um the guitar, everything is just there and you're present with all of it. And every time I listen to this track, even still, and this has been out for multiple weeks, and I've listened to this album more than anything else, and I still find myself completely engrossed with it. There is a symbiosis of sound with For the Cold Country that I think was present in Isaac Wood, BCNR, that is obviously missing a little bit in this album. And three different vocalists will do that, especially with a band that likes to try and lend their sound to fit the vocal style of its singer. Um, Having three, you're just not going to be as tonally cohesive. Which let me just segue this right into uh, my one criticism, if you could call it that. My criticism is that there's no Isaac Wood, which is not their fault. It's not his fault. But he's irreplaceable, not just as a frontman and as a vocalist, but as a cohesive element. This band functioned off of this concept of symbiosis of sound. And when you listen to Ants from Up There, what you hear most importantly is this concept that I just think I very rarely grip in music these days, which is just everything syncing in a way that, you hear, but not like this in music. And um, they capture it in For the Cold Country. They do, but not in every track on Forever How Long. And it was there in every track from Ants from Up There. And it's hard to really like put words to unless you're like an old school, from a couple of years ago, BCNR fan. Um, but there is just a magic to this like symbiosis, as I labeled it from before. And it just isn't, it can't be there without him, I think is the thing. And so it's hard to call it a criticism because nobody can do anything to change it, but you can't go without addressing it. It's not there. And you can tell it's missing because this is the same band. They decided to keep going, and you have to acknowledge that. But I'm sure as heck glad that they kept going because this album is phenomenal. It's the best, in my opinion, it's the best one that's come out so far this year, and we're a quarter through it. I'm so glad that Forever How Long exists and that I was graced with all of these awesome tracks. This album is a blessing to behold, and I think it's so accessible. So many people can listen to this and find different things to enjoy from it. It's got songs that'll make you groove. It's got songs that'll make you think. It's got a little bit of something for a lot of people, I think, and that's not something that old BCNR could say. So that's something where I could even give it a leg up, and I bet you there's not a lot of people who could say that. And so yeah, when I think about what rating I'm going to give this, uh, easily and absolutely, this is getting a tremendous 10.